I would love to kind of just start with you. I mean, from everything I've learned, fascinating human being, like pretty crazy, fascinating human being. From starting young, grew up in Massachusetts, not a bunch of money, made a lot of yourself, and, had started at Texas Instruments.
Yeah, so I guess we could start there. Grew up in a lower income household in Massachusetts with my dad as an immigrant from Lebanon. My mom is Portuguese, and they worked extremely hard to put me in good schools, and just had the good fortune of good family, good role models, and my dad was always focused on making sure that if I go to college, that I either need to be, an engineer, a doctor, one of the STEM disciplines to be able to make some money and not work in the factory kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I got my degree in electrical engineering and in liberal arts. And I would say that I was never really passionate about electrical engineering. That wasn't my thing. But I had the opportunity to have an internship with a company called Analog Devices in Boston, which led me to their competitor, Texas Instruments, and got into this elite program called the TSA program, and was with 25 other engineers from around the country, and it was hyper competitive, and these were the smartest people I'd ever been around. And we spent a year in Dallas. We rotated through various sections of TI, various divisions of TI.
This is when you started at TI, this TSA program?
Yeah, this was the TSA program. And then after a year in Dallas, they deployed each of us to various sales offices that they have throughout the United States. So the way that they did it, at least at the time, was they would hire these engineers, and some engineers would go into technical sales so they could speak the language and break into new categories, new businesses. You would have field sales engineers who tended to be a little bit more technical, and then you had the engineers that were in the factory. And so I went out into technical sales, and I cut my teeth early in my career in Silicon Valley. So I had the mass market, 4,000 customers. This would have been 2002. We were coming out of the big tech boom and bust. This was right after 9/11. Things were really hard in Silicon Valley. But worked 80 hours a week and learned how to be a professional, learned the ropes. We were really successful. The group of guys that I worked with, I'm still friends to this day. They've gone off to start, VC firms and, get MBAs and start companies. It was, just a really great group of guys. And so I did that for a couple years, and then I got promoted to be a worldwide marketing manager. So they relocated me back to Dallas, and this was a period of my life where I was able to travel all over the world. So
you're 24, 25-ish?
Yeah, I guess I'm about 24 at the time.
Okay.
Which was just really wild. I described that period of my life kind of like being a boy in a business suit.
Hey, that's how I feel right now.
Yeah,
so we're getting through it.
You're caught in that vortex between, still experience a bit of a delayed adolescence, but thrust into work situations that are, very meaningful and impactful, and could be multi-million-dollar deals that you're working on. And so by day, you're putting on, the starched button-down shirt. By night, you're playing video games or going to the bars or doing whatever you're doing, when you're 24. So it was, we always sort of described it as like the quarter-life crisis, this struggle, between, that transition between boyhood and manhood. And I would say that actually this period of my life when I took the position as a worldwide marketing manager, I ended up spending about half of the year overseas. So we had an office in Europe, in Freising, Germany. We had an office in Osaka, an office in Tokyo. And I was literally over there probably, 50% of the time. And when I was over there, I was alone for about 50% of the year.
Wow.
So here I am, I'm on these 14-hour flights, and the technology on the planes wasn't great back then. There was no Wi-Fi. I'm reading books. I'm in foreign countries where I don't speak the language. Just taking a lot of downtime, a lot of alone time to kind of figure things out in my life. And from an experience standpoint, to be in Japan, to do deals in Japan with Samsung, or Samsung was in Korea, but with Mitsubishi and with all of the high tech, electronic companies, we would spend time there. We'd go to South Korea. We were in China. We were in Taiwan. We had a big team there. And Freising, we also had a big team in Milan in northern Italy. I was working on semiconductor chips that controlled LED large form factor video displays, but also this was the onset of using LEDs for backlighting televisions. So we went from those cathode ray tubes, those gigantic TVs, into these like really thin monitors.
Those big boxes.
Yeah, big boxes down to small
I
boxes.
remember them very slightly from when I was little. So what was your specific role in that point? I mean, you're saying you're going alone. Are you the closer? Are you the technical guy explaining, all the ins and outs? I mean, what got you successful in that role? What specifically was your role in that?
So in product marketing, your job is to not only help promote the products that you've created and to work very high-level deals with large organizations, but it's also to listen and to gather feedback on the technologies that are coming and the type of engineering that we needed to create to support those technologies. So my job was really being a liaison between these large customers who are doing huge volumes with us and the factory who is creating this roadmap of new products that are coming down the pike. And the learning curve of being thrust into these situations and these different cultures and these different environments and hosting dinners and understanding all of the nuances of sitting at a table in Japan and how to hand a business card to somebody and to adapt to these different, cultural milieus, I think was really eye-opening for a young kid from the projects in New Bedford, Massachusetts. So it was an important part of my life, and it's ultimately kind of what led me to The Apprentice.
Yeah. So, you talked a little bit about being young and all this learning. I am about as fresh fish out of college as you can get. Have had amazing opportunities here so far, but completely understand. I mean, it's a different world, I mean, went to the University of Texas and they did an amazing job preparing us, but there's some things you get in and you don't realize. I mean, what to pack when you travel has been difficult for me. I mean, everything. So I can only imagine how much even more coming from where you came from to such a large company like TI and then going all over the world.
Everybody's journey is a little different, and I think the transition out of college was especially tough for some because you spend the first 22 years of your life largely being taken care of. Even when you're in college,
yeah, absolutely.
You have, your food, the cafeteria is there for you. You're not necessarily, making your own meals or in some cases doing your own laundry. And then you get out into the working world and you're by yourself and you have bills for the first time. You might have a car for the first time. I had never owned a car until I graduated from college.
Wow.
Never had a cell phone until I graduated from college. Never really did very much banking. I had like a simple checking account, but the idea of setting up 401ks and just all of the life skills required to survive as a young man.
Yeah.
Some of us just aren't necessarily really prepared for. So you're weaving that into learning how to be a professional and going into the workforce. And for the first time, for many of us, working with people that are multi-generational, working with guys who are in their 70s and 60s and 50s and having to connect and adapt. And then you're weaving in new cultures into it. So I talk a lot about the importance of communication and the ability to communicate well and to connect with people. And, it's really a life skill that I think is one of the most underappreciated.
So TI sounds pretty amazing, though. I mean, you're working on brand new technology all over the world. you have a job that so many people would love. Why leave? Why go to The Apprentice? Why change up if you had something going for you? What was that experience like?
Yeah, well, I won't say that it was necessarily intentional. So I'll talk about how the Apprentice came to be. But for all of the benefits of TI, we internally used to joke that TI stood for Training Institute, and that's ultimately what it was. The 5 years I was at TI, I got the best professional education I could have possibly hoped for. I had great mentorship. We took a lot of training and classes, and was thrust into situations that would help me develop over my career. Decades into the future. What The Apprentice would do, the producers of The Apprentice, Mark Burnett Productions, they would go around to Fortune 500 companies, all over the U.S. They would hold these open casting calls, and they partnered with TI, and they said, hey, can we come in, hold an open casting call, and have your employees come and interview for The Apprentice? And TI was all about it because it would create, a lot of positive publicity if one of the employees of TI got on the show. I had never seen the show. I didn't even own a television. As I mentioned before, I was
had
overseas
no
all the time.
Technology.
Yeah,
you nothing. Barely use his phone now. I mean,
Yeah,
you've come a long way. You
Exactly.
really have.
So my buddy, came to me. He's like, "Hey, let's throw on the suits and let's go try out for The Apprentice." And I'm like, "I don't even know what The Apprentice is." And so they bring us into this room, and there are 10 employees. I mean, they're just lines out the door, right, for this open casting call. And they bring 10 employees in, and they're creating these debates and trying to see how people react in group environments and how well they can take a position and argue that position. And at the end of this, maybe 30-minute group interview session, they go around the room and they say, well, if there's one person in this room besides you that you think should be on The Apprentice, who should it be? The other 9 people pointed to me. So then they send me to round 2, where I have a one-on-one interview with a producer. And then from there, they say you have to go and make this at-home video, which nowadays people make at-home videos all day, every day with their phone. At the time, I had to track down a kid in college who had a camera and
weird.
could edit.
It's odd.
So we make this at-home video. I don't hear anything for 8 months. I don't think much of it. I just go about my business, traveling all over. And then I get a call in August of 2015, hey, you're one of the final 50.
Wow.
So they then fly me to LA. We're sequestered for a week. They do medical testing, IQ testing, psychological testing. We go through this whole round of interview after interview after interview after interview. It was just like totally exhausting. You couldn't talk to any of the other people that were one of the final 50. From there, I'm skipping over a lot, but from there, I get pulled in on the very last day. All the producers are in the room, clap their hands. Congratulations, you're on The Apprentice, season 5. You need to be in New York in 3 weeks. And in the midst of all of this, what I come to find out is we actually can't tell anybody that I'm going to be on The Apprentice.